and in this class today, we'll be adding authentication to our application. So just a recap to find out where we stopped in the last class. We start up our server, Flask run. Let me zoom out the screen. All right. So this is there. So we open our browser and localhost 5000. Okay, we still have our page. Let's try searching the result. React. Okay, and we also have a URL route to add content. And we can successfully add content. Now, ideally, we want to implement a requirement whereby only someone with login credentials, only somebody that has access to the system, only a specific set of people that have access to a particular set of credentials can successfully populate content. So what that means is we want to protect this route so that you need to log in to access this route. But for the rest of our application, you don't need to log in. For the search page, you don't need to log in. And in order to do that, we're going to make use of a Flask extension known as Flask-Login. So go to Google Flask-Login and we follow the steps in installing the extension. So we know the first thing is to install Flask-Login. So I'm going to open a new tab, start my virtual environment, and run pip install Flask-Login. While it's installing, I'll add it to my requirements.txt file. So Flask-Login is equal to 0.4.0. All right, so we have Flask-Login installed. So we can read up on what it does. Flask-Login only handles authentication. It doesn't really do anything much. So we can hook it up with any database or any backend of our choice. You want to support social authentication, as in logging in through Facebook, logging in through whatsoever one support, Flask-Login makes it easy to do so. So the first thing first is to import the login manager. So since Flask-Login is going to be used mainly on our view, we are going to initialize the object in our view at the top. So we from Flask-Login import login manager. I'll create the object and login manager is equal to login manager. So we've created the object. Of course, we know that we need to initialize this login manager in our app object, as in the alternative way of initializing extensions. So we return to our setup. After we import the views, then we call views.loginmanager.init app. And we can guarantee that the login extension as Flask is now notified of that particular extension. All right. So what is the next step we need to do? Following documentation, we need to set up a user loader callback. Now, what is user loader callback? What it does is, it is how Flask, after we've logged in with Flask, how Flask is able to know that this particular user, because when we log in with our credentials, username and password, we end up getting an ID. And that ID is supposed to match a particular user. So in our case, we're going to make use of a user database class, but subsequently it could be anything. So once we log in and Flask-Login provides the ID, we need to be able to pull out a user object from that ID. So we need a user class. So it is from this user loader callback that ends up going to the class and querying the class for that particular ID to see if the user actually exists. If the result is none, that means the authentication is invalid and the person is not going to be logged in. But if it returns a valid user object, then the user will successfully be logged in. So in our requirement, we're going to implement a fake user class, whereby a fake user class. And in this class, to log into that to our application, you have to provide the password. So as in the username is going to be learner@example.com and the password is going to be password. So if you provide any other credential that doesn't fit that, it won't allow you to log in. So the first thing we need to do is, before we implement the user loader callback, let's create our user model. Now, like I said, this could be a database class, but for now, we're going to implement a simple class that has an ID that does nothing for now. Now, for Flask-Login to be able to query from this class needs to implement some methods. And if you look at the documentation of Flask-Login, our user class is supposed to implement the following methods: is authenticated, is active, is anonymous, and get user ID. You can see this get user ID is what ends up being called by the user loader callback. So instead of having to implement all these methods one by one, Flask-Login comes with a mixin that implements all this for us. Now, a mixin is literally another class that we are going to inherit from. So when I say a mixin, I literally mean an inheritance from a different class. So we import the mixin from Flask-Login, import user mixin, and our user class is going to end up inheriting from the user mixin. Now, if we look at the definition of the user mixin, it requires the definition. What we're really interested in is the get ID, and it requires we have an ID field in our class. So come back to our class, we're going to just set a default ID of, say, 23. This is just a demo representation. So it means we're to come back to our view, whatsoever ID we end up getting, well, we've not implemented it yet. Whatsoever ID we end up getting, we must be able to fetch that particular ID from this place. So now we can now implement our user loader callback. We're going to do that in our view. So at login manager.user loader, and we are going to just follow the convention: def load user, and it takes in what? User ID. And in this case, since we know that we only have one user instance, and the user instance is the ID of 22, we'll just what will we do? We'll just return the new instance of the user. So we import our user object, and done user, creating a new instance of the user. Ideally, we're going to gradually replace this user from a regular class to an actual SQL alchemy model. But for now, we want to keep things simple. So with this, Flask-Login knows how to query a user. And with this, we can then protect the root that we want to allow login access to. And to do that, we import a decorator known as login required from the Flask-Login object. So now I add content immediately after this at login required. And with this, if we try accessing the /content page, we'll be redirected to the login page. But looking at our view, there is no login page. So we need to implement a login page and a logout page. Now let us see if we can get the sample login page from Flask-Login. So they have one here. So we'll just copy this implementation and we'll fine tune it to our use. So we're implementing the login page now. Of course, we understand what's happening here, both a get and a post request. Now we know that our login page, you need to provide a username and a password. The username is what? learner@example.com, and the password is password. So we need a way how we can collect that information. And we're going to be making use of the login form. The login form doesn't exist yet, so we need to create it in our forms class. So from our forms, we're going to import login form. And then we end up going to our forms class to implement the login form. Class login form, and is implementing from Flask form. We know the fields we need. The field is the username or email. Let us call it the email is equal to string field email, and of course we expect it should be required. It's actually a required field. Then the password is also a string field and password, and the validator is also a required field. So with this, we've implemented a simple login form. Now coming back to our views, we're importing the login form. If it is validated, then we want to log in the user. Now this user has to come from somewhere. So we know that the user that we're interested in, so the point is, once we've logged in the form and we validated the form, the user is supposed to come from somewhere. So let us figure out how to validate this form, because right now the only validation that is happening is when the user types in the correct email and the password. But like we said, we only want to log in the user if the user supplies a username, an email of learner@example.com, and a password of password. And to do that, in our forms class, we need to override the validate method. Dev validate. So we run the initial validation to ensure that we don't break anything. Result is equal to super.validate. Now let's be sure that we are getting, yeah. So we don't want to break any of these validation. All right. So we get the email. Email is equal to self.data email, and password is equal to self.data password. Now, if email and password, that is, if both of them exist, and if the email is equal to what? learner@example.com, and the password is equal to password, then it is true. We're returning true. Else, want to raise an error on the field, that as in to confirm that the validation was not correct. So it's this, you can say I made a mistake here, it's supposed to be and. So in order to do that, we use self.email.errors. Let us figure out how to add an error message to the field. And to do that, we go to Flask-WTF forms and WTF forms from errors. Okay. So in the WTF form documentation, how do we add form errors? Let's see. WTF documentation. Okay. So let's find there are a lot of them. And it looks like we're running into difficulty finding out to add custom error messages. Custom error messages, WTF forms. Okay, so we have this. We have default built-in validators. Now for a custom error, we just need to raise a validation error on the field itself. But we're not interested in that. We're interested in the validation on the class. So how do we go about that? And we are kind of stuck at the moment. All right, so okay, I think there was an hint in this place that gave us, and there was an hint somewhere here. Flashing error messages. Okay, not this. And let's look at the previous results. Okay, Flask validation with WTF forms. You can see in the template, we can pull out the error message from field.errors. So it means if self is a field, from the errors, we want to add the new error message, which is going to be the email password combination is wrong. So it means if the person tries typing an email and password that isn't what we want it to be, then this error message appears on the screen, supposed to appear on the screen. And then we want to return false. So once this validation runs, if it returns true, everything went well. If it returns false, then we made a mistake. We made a mistake. And it's supposed to return a user object. So after everything has happened, what is supposed to happen? We need a user object. So in our model, we just need to return for now. Since we're using a very simplistic model, we can just create an instance. You can just return where we would gradually upgrade our model, our user model, to an SQL alchemy model. So before we do that, let's get our form up and running. So now we can see we have, if the validation is login user. So this login function comes from the Flask-Login. So this is what is responsible for logging in the user. The Flask-Login. If you want to look at the implementation, it takes in the user. So it takes in the user and it pulls out the ID from the user. So we're supposed to send in a user object inside the login implementation. Also, we have something known as a flash message. This is kind of like a notification that Flask provide, and we can access this from Flask object. Then we're using the request object. Now, if there is a next URL, then we want to automatically redirect the user to the next URL. Now, anyways, we're going to see how most of all this works. But for now, let us ensure that our form is working well. And if everything works correctly, we want to redirect the person back to the home page. If everything works correctly, or to where they were coming from initially before they were thrown away. They were thrown to the login page. So the URL for belongs to Flask object. And with this, we already have the redirect, and we already have the vendor template. So we need to implement our login form. Now you can see this user right now is showing an error, but we're going to eventually fix that. But let's go and add our login template. So login.html. We know it's going to process a form, so we're going to borrow a lot of design from this particular page. So the first thing first, we're going to just copy everything here, Ctrl A, Ctrl C, come back to our form, Ctrl V. But in this case, we only have what? Email and password. So we are only interested in, so in the URL, we are going to the login URL, and our form is also a post form. So in this place, we end up with a email field and title is email. Placeholder here, we're going to use email. I'm going to replace all of this with email. Let me undo this. Okay. Then on the second field, it is password. And we're going to replace this with password. And the placeholder, we're going to replace this with password. And the actual form, we go to the form dot password. And with this, you can delete the list, and we're leaving our button. So with this, we've successfully implemented our form. So let's test it out to see if we did everything correctly. If we try accessing the add document page now, it should redirect us to the login page. Okay, now it's saying we are running into an error that the server is, the page we're trying to access is unauthorized. So there's one more setting we need to do. We need to tell Flask that when we're trying to access a non-authorized view, that it should redirect. We need to tell Flask that this particular view is our login page. And to find out more about that, we will see that in the documentation. So customizing the login process. You can see we need to specify our login view. So we're going to copy this implementation, come back to our views.py, and now views.py, we are going to add the login view. And in this our own case, it is login. So with this, if we were to refresh this page, we should be redirected to the login page. Now, if you look at the URL at the top, you can see the next parameter. So because we tried accessing the add content page and it required us to log in, we're thrown into the login page. So we can type anything here, but you can see our password is appearing as clear text. That is a bad idea. So we need to customize our form to ensure that our password is protected. So to do that, we go down to the forms and we we change the widget. So go down to the WTF form.widget. So from WTF forms.widget, import password input. There are a lot of other inputs, so we're interested in the password input. So the widget we're going to add here is equal to password input. And with this, we're to refresh our page. Our password, okay, is expected to be an instance of the class. So let's refresh our page. All right, so you can see our password is now appearing in the password form. So we know this is working. So the next thing is to ensure that error messages ends up displaying when we do the wrong thing, because right now, if we do this, our form will just redirect here. We don't know what happened. We don't know what we did wrong. We don't know what we did right. So we need to ensure that we end up displaying error messages. And luckily for us, there's a snippet here where if there is an error, then we can render the error messages. But now, okay, since we're using Twitter Bootstrap, we would go and look at how Bootstrap handles displaying of errors. And we can find out about that in the CSS and in the form section. So we know that in Twitter Bootstrap, we're looking for the error state. So the validation state, if there's an error, the whole element is wrapped with a red label, and it means we're adding the as class error. And of course, we're also interested in adding an helpful text that shows the error. So the first thing first is let us deal with the text for the error. We're going to copy this implementation, come back to our login.html. Now we'll first check if our form.email.errors, then we want to paste the block of text. But now instead of just this block of text, we're going to replace it with the actual errors. Now there could be more than one error for a particular field. So we're going to run a for loop for error in form.email.errors. Then we would paste this span message. Okay. So at least we've handled the error in the form. Let us test it out to see if it works. Come back here, refresh the page, continue, and let's submit. The error doesn't seem to be showing. Just be sure that we're doing the right thing. Okay. Well, the block is actually showing. It's just that we're not displaying any message. So I'm supposed to render the error. And with that, we'll come back and refresh our page. Now you can see the error message is showing correctly. And if we are, so if we land on this page, normally no error message should show, but an error message is still showing. And so let's check. All right. So let us navigate away from this page. And let us navigate back to the page. All right, so you can see everything, nothing displayed. But when we try submitting this, because the validation is invalid, we are going to get an error message. The email password combination is wrong. And if we don't put anything in the password and we try submitting, well, we've not added the password error. So let's go and do that. So for the password, it's literally the same thing. And then copy and paste. But instead of email in this place, we're going to replace it password with password. And with this, let's refresh our page. We should always get password related errors when we don't specify a password. So we're to delete this. See, we still end up getting this field is required. Now, but because there's still one more thing we're missing. The output is supposed to highlight red. And for it to highlight red, we need to add the as warning class. but this as warning class only has to show when there's an error in our form. So we come back to our form group. In the class section, we put our if statement, if form dot email dot errors, then we want to add the as error, and then we're ending our end if statement. Copying the same implementation to password section. In this case, we're going to replace this with password. And with that, let's refresh our page. We have, once there's an error, it's going to be highlighted in red. So let's see if everything is working as expected. Well, our JavaScript, now you can see there's an error in this place that is highlighted in red. Now that we've put username and password, if I try submitting a page, both of them should be highlighted. Well, the email field should be highlighted in red because it's going to end up complaining that the email and password combination is wrong. So we've handled that. Now the next step is when it is actually true, what do we want to happen? So coming back to the to our views.py, we know that we're supposed to generate a user. So this user is supposed to come from somewhere. So the user is going to be form is equal the user is equal to form dot get user. So we're going to implement a get user method that just returns an arbitrary user after the form has been validated. So coming back to our form, we implement a def get user, and in this case we'll just return a simple user object. So for models, import user. So we are returning a simple user object to come back to our views. So we now have our users and we can successfully log in our users. Now, if we look at the implementation of this login, it requires a user object. So it will, from the user, it will try and get the ID attribute of the user. And that is why in our model, we needed to specify the ID. So when it gets the ID, remember that it will come back here and try and use this particular ID. Right now, we're not doing any implementation, but if we're using something like SQL, for example, now, in this place, it's going to be something like query.filter user.id is equal to the user ID that it ends up finding, if the user exists or if the user does not exist. So it's something like this we need to do. And in fact, now is actually a good time to replace our implementation from the demo to an SQL Alchemy implementation. So we're going to leave this the way it is. We're going to convert our model to an SQL Alchemy implementation. We're still going to make use of this user mixing, but Python supports multiple inheritance. So go to port db.model. You know we need an ID field. So I'm going to copy the ID field and then an email field, which is what db.column db.string. So those are the only two fields we need for now. Well, we could also add the password field, but for now our requirement is the password must be password. So we're not going to add our password field. So since we've added a new model, we need to upgrade our migration. So open a new terminal, then flask-db migrate. Created a new migration and flask-db upgrade. And with this, we've upgraded our. So let us go and add the default user so that when this particular part of the code runs, it's able to find our user with that ID. And if it does not find our user with that ID, it doesn't allow the person to log in. We have to remember to put .first so that the person does not exist. It returns none. And once it returns none, it doesn't allow the person to log in. So start our Flask shell to open the interactive shell. And the interactive shell, we create our user object. Now we know that we have to save this user object, and we know that in our previous models, we had this save method. Now you can see we repeated this save method in this session count, session result. We repeated it in the session counter, and we are going to repeat it again in the user object. So we could create an helpful class that does this for us. I'm going to call that class save mixing. It's a regular object, and it knows how to save. It implements the save method. And with this, we can literally just add that particular class to our SQL models. So automatically, you can see we have to specify it as the first class, because there's something in Python known as the method resolution order. So as much as possible, any class that directly implements from object should be placed before the much stronger class like the DB model object. So we've implemented for search counter. Let's implement for save mixing for search result, and let's also implement for, so you can see here we can then end up with 3 different classes, which is not so much a bad idea. So with this, let's restart our interactive shell from src.models import user. Now we said the user must be who? Must be learning at example.com. So user email is equal to learning at example.com and aa.save. And we've saved that particular user. Now we know that this user exists. So if we run user.query.all, the user is pulled out. Coming back to our forms implementation, in the place where we're validating this thing, you can see here we are coding the email. Now we can choose to check if this particular email actually exists. And to do that, we are going to create a custom method. A custom method to validate the email. So def, well, we could do it in many ways, but let us just go about it the easy way. So in this case, we're interested in, let us see if we can fetch the user object. And that is what user.query.filter user.email is equal to learner at example.com. Actually, not learning, so that we don't make mistake. Learning at example.com. .first. So if this user exists, and the password is equal to password, then it should return true, else it should return false. So with this, we have implemented the validation of our form, and the get user part. In fact, we can literally just move this to the get user part of our code. So, and return. Okay, let me undo this. Control X self.get user. So in this case, so if the user.email is equal to learning.example.com, so what we want here instead is we want to pass in the email, the user that we got, and that is who is that? can get that from the self.data email. But that doesn't, this get user is what is used externally. Yeah, in our views.py to get the actual user, as in the user that submitted the form and try logging in. But in our forms, in this place, we are interested in a user with the, if there is a user with, if the email that we passed in is, if the email we passed in is learning@example.com and that email already exists in our database, or alternatively, we're just interested in, as long as the email the person passes in exists in our database, so we really don't care what the email is, as long as the email exists in our database. Right now, only one email exists in our database, which is learning@example.com. So we're pulling from that email, we're checking if the email exists, and if it does, so we really don't need this. Okay, we really don't need to do this check here again because we're not using this data. So, and if the password is invalid, the first one would have validated. But we've seen the password. So we can throw away this and we can indent this one-step password. So we've gotten the user here. If the user and the password is equal to password, it should return true, else it should throw this validation error and it should return false. And with this, our application should successfully log us in. So coming down to the views, we've implemented everything we need to do. The log implementation, form.getUser returns the user object, we log in the user, we show a flash message, we get the next URL. So next is actually a keyword in Python, so we're going to use next underscore. False is not cause any problem, but it's always good to ensure your variable names are not keywords in Python. I'm going to remove all these comments, kind of causing a lot of noise. And with this, let's try our implementation again. So we log in, as in refresh our page. So right now we're calling the table SQL mode that does not have a table name specified and does not inherit from an existing table map class, but we're already doing that. So db.model. Why is it complaining? Let's refresh our page again. All right. So it was a tiny error. All right. So we know our username is, if we try this and we try the correct password, we're going to run into an error because the email password combination is wrong. So we need to use the correct password, which is what? The correct email, which is learning@example.com, and the password is password. And with this, you can see we've been redirected to the home page and we've been logged in. And how do we know that we're logged in? If we try accessing the add content page, it won't complain anymore. It automatically logs us in. Now let us implement the logout functionality so that we can successfully log out of this page. And it is actually simple. We just need to implement the logout view. We can copy this implementation, come back to our views.py, and our views.py, we're going to redirect the person to the home page. So we're redirecting to the URL for home. Logging out the user, I'm going to go and import that from the Flask-Login. I'm going to show a flash message. You are logged out. So this login, logout underscore user, I'm going to import that from Flask-Login. Log out user. You can see we're using a dot here instead of a comma. And with this, let's implemented our logout method. But you can see so far we are not seeing our flash message. So let us see if we can hook up, how to hook up a flash message with flash message flask. And with this, you can see message flashing. How do we do this? So in our template, we're supposed to have a with message, but we have a with message to get all the flash messages and to paste everything. So let us copy this implementation, go to customize it to our need. We want our flash message to show up on this part of our page at the top here. We want it to show up here. So we have to go to the main page, which is the index.html, and it's going to be used all over our page. Index.html. And before the body, go to copy and paste the implementation. But we're not going to use this UL, we're going to use a Bootstrap alert dialog that Bootstrap provides. We can find that under the JavaScript section. Either JavaScript or the component section, one of them. Okay, so in the JavaScript section, we're looking for alerts. So we need something like this. And to do something like that, what do we use? Can't find it, so let us just right click, inspect element, and we have our design here with us. So we're going to copy outer HTML, and instead of the UL, we will just remove this UL element because we don't need it. I'm just interested in content, and we're going to replace everything inside with the message. So with the message. All right, see how long our flash message looks like. And with this, all the flash messages that didn't show initially, every single one of them should be showing up now. Okay, let's refresh our page. And the waiting looks like internet is quite slow, but hopefully it should refresh. Now you can see all the flash messages are showing. Now it would be nice if when there's an error or when we log out, it is blue. When we log in, it is green. And there's a way Flask provides us with something similar. Our Flask messages can have categories. By default, Bootstrap comes with different categories, warning, error. So to do that, we're going to end up getting the Flask messages with categories. And then when we are pulling the message, so from the message, we're also getting the category from the message. So actually, the category is the first parameter, not the second parameter. So category is the first parameter. Then this is where we're going to inject the category. So with this now, we can now go to our pages that are using the flash and use the correct flash. So here, I'm going to pass in success when we log in, and here I'm going to pass in info. And with this, let us try our logout page. Let us try our logout page again. So if we're to log out, we're waiting for our page, because you can see it's showing blue. But to try logging in again, then that example, we use our correct password and it's showing green, and our Flask messages are working well. Now we implemented the JavaScript, so that's why it's not closing. But if we wanted this to close, we will need to add JavaScript or Bootstrap to the body of our page. And to do that, let me close the DevTools. We just come and copy out this link, and we come back to our page in the index.html, and we'll place it before at the end of the body tag so that it doesn't block our page from rendering. And with this, even though we'll come back to our view, we're to refresh the page, of course it goes away, but we're to log out, we're now logged out, and we're to click on the button. Well, it's supposed to close. I don't know why it's not closing, but we could do that as an assignment to get it to close. And with that, we successfully implemented the login functionality for our page. Now we're going to do a bit of house cleaning. If we look at our init.py file, we have most of our configurations being used in this place. So we're going to be moving all of them to a separate file. And we're going to be loading the configuration dynamically from an environmental variable. So to do that, we're going to create a settings package. So we're going to create a settings package. Because the difference between a folder and a package is that the package has the under init.py. Then we're going to have a base.py file. We're going to have a local.py file, and we're going to have a production.py file. So this is going to be production specific settings, this is going to be development specific settings, this is going to be settings that is general across all of them. The production is going to inherit from base. So from base import also this is going to inherit from dot base import star. So it's not just base, it's supposed to be dot base. And here we're going to move all this Flask configuration, everything here. So everything that has to do with all this secret key and goes away from here. Going to stay in the base, but in this case, it's no longer going to appear as flask.config. We're going to use the variable to represent them. And in this case, this secret key is going to be in capital letter, secret key. Now you can see the database variable is being expected. So we go to our cut out all of this, and we paste every single one of them at the top. First, we need to import the OS module. OS. Okay, let us put some spacing in between. So we've successfully moved our config, but we need to find a way of hooking them up with Flask. And like I said, we want to use an environmental variable to hook them up. So app.config.from file. So we're going to use os.getEnv, the Flask configuration environmental variable. And if none is specified, we're going to use settings/local.py to ensure the application is working. So it will check this. If none is specified, it should go to the settings/local.py. And let's test that out to ensure our application is not breaking. Okay, it requires one position argument, file name. So it requires the file name. That is what we are doing here. Why is it complaining? Okay, we're supposed to specify. Okay, so parent config module cannot be loaded under relative import. So what that means is inside the local, instead of a relative import, what specify the full import source settings dot base, and also here source settings dot base. And with this, to refresh our page, our application is still working as expected using the correct environmental variable. So if we wanted to go into production, then hopefully in our startup config, which is in our startup.sh, we can just come here and run export flask configuration is equal to settings slash production.py, and this is what will be used when our application starts. But for now, I'll just comment it out because we're still working with development. Now, one more tool that can help us in development in trying to find out how things work is an extension known as the Flask-Debugtoolbar. So if we're to Google the Flask-Debugtoolbar, provides a way to help us to debug our application. So Flask-Debugtoolbar, and let's figure out how to set it up. We're going to see the use in a while. This is only useful for development. So as much as possible, we don't want to install this in production. So we are going to run. So just the way we're able to split out our config file into base, development, and production, we're going to do something similar to our requirements so that we don't end up mistakenly installing production and development dependencies in production. We want our dependencies to be as small as possible. So go create a folder known as requirements, and inside that folder we're going to have a base.txt file, we're going to have a local.txt file, and we're going to have a production.txt file, and inside them our old requirement.txt file, we are going to move all the content away because all these contents are important and they're going to end up staying in the base.txt. But for requirements like this Flask-Debugtoolbar, that is going to stay in the local.txt. So let's install it. If install Flask-Debugtoolbar, while it's installing in our local.txt, we import the base.txt by using the tag R, and we specify Flask-Debugtoolbar is equal to 0.10.1. Then in our production.txt, tag R base.txt. And with this, if we wanted to install our local dependencies, we just run pip install tag R requirements/local.txt file, and to pull all dependencies for local. We want to install for production exactly the same way. So now let's go and configure the Flask-Debugtoolbar. We come to our, what are the things we need to set up? App.debug is equal to true. So it's only enabled in debug mode. Luckily for us, the Flask server handles this, so we don't need to set this manually. The only thing we will need to set is to enable, because the toolbar is enabled, is to prevent it from intercepting redirect. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to go to our local.py file. Then in this place, I'm going to set this to false. And with this, we successfully, okay, one more thing we need to do is we need to initialize the config. Now, we know that this particular config is only useful in development. So we need to run the check. If, before we run the check, we need to move our config environmental variable. Flask configuration is equal to Flask configuration. So we assign it to a variable. So we need to run a check. If Flask configuration is in development, settings/local.py, then we want to import Flask-Debugtoolbar. So from Flask-Debugtoolbar, import debug toolbar extension to be sure that we're importing the correct stuff. Yeah, debug toolbar extension. And since we're not using it anywhere else, we can just initialize it in the app directly. So debug toolbar extension app. So we know that this debug toolbar will only import it when we're running locally. And if we're to refresh our page, now just watch at the side, you should see the debug toolbar at the side. So you can see it tells us some information. If we want to find out about the routes on our page, all the routes on our page, and it tells us the different endpoint name. Let's say, for instance, we did a search in this page and want to see how many SQL Alchemy queries happened. Click React, you can see the number of SQL Alchemist queries, the actual SQL statements that happened on that particular page, the templates that were used, all the variables that were sent down from the template, our app configuration, the request variables, any information, HTTP headers, the time it took our request to run, the version of all our third-party libraries that was being used by application. So it's actually very useful for development. And with that, this is where we stop. Thank you. Till the next class.